Kathy Vick, Deeply Awake, and here I am again. I think it's been about a month since I did a video, and a little bit less that I did an essay, and the essay knocked me for a loop. It was really, really good. I reread it just recently, and it stands. It's got legs. It walks around. It does a dance or two as you read it. It's very lovely work. And the videos. The interest in those comes and goes. So it doesn't bother me that perhaps others are not interested or whatever, because there are times when I cannot attend to what I've produced. So go figure. I don't know. I do know that that I had yet again another experience with reality sort of folding over on itself and presenting itself to me in an atypical way when I did this last video and talked about the primacy of personal experience. That was just because that had come through so loudly. It was a key. And then I did more research into the work of Terence McKenna, and there it is. He doesn't, I don't know if he uses that exact term, but that is the whole point. That there is no fixed reality out there, that the idea, that's been another thing that's been coming through, this idea that seems to be organic, innate within me, that there is a template without. And it is my job to match the template. I really enjoy stumbling upon realities like that, truths like that, in a somehow simplified form. It's as if the conundrum sits there and boils for a lifetime, and then you walk past it one day and look down and, oh, it's actually a usable sauce now. Finally. It was inedible, but now finally I can consume it. And that's what a lot of these thoughts have been like. I realize that I have moved from the basic work of identity, meaning what is me and what is not me, and that this indeed is a very important part of the whole process, because I think that the culture and the mindset, the consciousness requires that our meaning is to a greater or larger extent placed outside of us, and it is our task to unlock it and bring it in and integrate it. So it seemed that realizing what I am and what I am not was very important and like primary to what I was wrestling with. When I look back on it, that's indeed what I was doing. That is me. That is not me. That is me. That is not me. But you have to understand that when going through a number of light activations, or whatever you want to call it, DNA activations, life changes, what else do you want to call it? I don't know. That this concept of me begins to shift. I would hope that a child at 5 has a different concept of self than that person at 15 or 25 or 55. I think that's a big part of what goes wrong in humans, is this need to identify self with totems from the outside. That's me, that's not me. We do this with human beings, with people who are in our lives too. So my work seems to be as much a deconstructive enterprise as a reconstructive enterprise, because in naming, first trying to figure out what me is after having light shows, meditations, channeled information, disembodied information, and my daily life turning into a synchronous patchwork of realities. It has come to my attention that with the naming of, yes, that is me, that is not me, that is not me, that is me, that kind of thing, it is very binary. It requires resistance. It requires a membrane. It requires saying yes and saying no. It requires limiting, and that's fine. That's what personality construction is. That's what daily life construction is. But there's something more. After the definitions have been mined and reset, what remains is something that you can't really measure, of course. And it's beauty, it's meaning, it's significance. These things are not quantifiable. To do so is an exercise in ignorance and arrogance and futility. It's not necessary. It is felt. And that's how it's understood. Well, you can imagine if someone shut down in their emotions, how hard that might be, right? And in this life, oftentimes, the resistance to change, the resistance to anything but the familiar is so strong that the outside must conspire to break down the illusion. I think that's why sometimes the illusion or Maya is seen as inferior. It's not. It's not. Physical life is not inferior. And that's sort of the flavor of the Judeo-Christian ethic, right? Good will come to us eventually. Not now, but later. And we, in the West, paste that onto Eastern religions too, and it's not actually quite accurate. So what I've been puzzling with now is this idea of, there was a time long ago when I realized that probably the very best thing that I could aspire to become was a Renaissance man, a Renaissance person. It seemed a bit daft to specialize, given what was available. And rather, it seemed a more noble approach to attempt to master as many skills or interests that I might have, and to always remain open, to always understand that I have a lot to discover. And clearly, as my life progressed, that value began to recede. It became more and more evident and necessary for me to dismiss the spiritual, to dismiss the non-quantifiable. And so I did fall very far into cultural roles, into norms, and into the dream, which is a nightmare, actually. It's a nightmare. It's not a dream. And I'm glad for that. I I guess it's been my job to reconcile this higher reality with a lower mind. I used to call it little mind and big mind. I don't like higher and lower because I really I just I've had it with authoritarianism. I've had it. I just don't care anymore. That kind of thing is finally beginning to lose its grip on me. But that comes from shifting the core of authority from the exterior to the interior. I had myself an unusual setup because it was a requirement for me to hold as true and possibly sacred the idea that that I'm not loved and I'm not lovable, that there is no hope for me, these kind of things. And I know that this is because I, like many people, have in my fields, let's say it that way, this putrid energy of hate, of destruction, of primal ego, homicidal ego, homicidal ego. And having seen people, certain people's ego structures turn homicidal and remain that way, I had a vantage point that many didn't. I had stresses that you may not know anything about. And if I were to tell you my reality, well, like I've said before, you truly would be shocked that as my highest reality, I hold love. But this idea of love has changed as much as the idea of me has changed. And I was highly resistant toward the idea that love is sacrifice. And yet, I look on it and realize that that's all I did for a great deal of my life. That was the driving force to serve others without regard to self. That was the whole point. And because I'm built the way I am, because the people who are around me spiritually are there, I was able to do that, but at great personal cost. And as far as I'm concerned, service to others with no thought of self, that is the definition of hell. That's hell. Someone who's of service to others with no regard to self, who calls out for help, surrounded by people who require that person who's asking for help to feed them. that's hell. So, service to self and service to other, that model, that to me is the essence of a polarized reality. It's the recipe for what we see playing out. So if I'm not serving others who may or may not serve me, but in my experience have spent most of their time fighting me and spitting at me rather than saying thank you, what is there? That's a mother asking. That's a nurse asking. That's a healer asking. If I'm not here to serve you, why am I here? Why am I around people if not to help them? Well, helping is different than serving. A. And B, that the question is being asked implies you haven't found the answer yet. It's not about service. Yeah, it's part of it. What about appreciation? What about beauty? What about laughter? What about that feeling that can flood you of relaxation and safety and comfort? I realize only now that that reality is something that a lot of people live in day to day. And it's something that I was denied and got used to, and then continued to deny myself of. And so for me, these happy feelings, these calm feelings, always had to be brought back down to that low place of anxiety, panic, terror, lack, fear. And I would wonder about that. Take all things back to the Father, right? Take all things into self. It's another way of saying it. But to what end? So that every happy experience could be tainted with fear and loathing? So that every sense of freedom that I might feel is infected with that claustrophobic pall of being done to, of being in someone else's prison? And I'm realizing it's not about bringing all those beautiful feelings back to the anxiety. That fear, that anxiety, that trepidation. That's an infection. That's the problem. It's unnatural. So, sure, by bringing back the good stuff, the light, the lightness, bringing it back down into that sadness and fear and all that. And that's a way of lightening up the sadness and fear, but I couldn't usually extricate myself. I couldn't hold both perspectives. And now I'm realizing that Well, I've played with the concept of personality structure, ego structure, social interfaces, uh, social roles, squeezing a soul into a slice of expectation or behavior. And simply put, human beings are just too big to identify by one thing. That fundamentally is the problem. It's moving from this idea of polarity and of things adding up and all things having an opposite to something far, far larger. And it's only in this larger awareness that the opposites are indeed seen as whole. Perspective is required, a larger perspective, a higher, greater perspective. And the thing is that it's really hard to hold a higher or greater perspective when in relation to someone who really, really needs you to be small, to be subservient, and to hate yourself. It's tough. Well, sooner or later, I would hope that everyone, including me, would realize that the requirement, that kind of requirement, is only made by someone who is running a game. It's an energetic game, and it's voluntary whether you play or not. So, this boils down to concluding some things about evil, about self, and about other. And it's with great peace that I transmit this today, because I am understanding far better now than ever before that at least for me personally, the requirement was that I had no sense of self, and that any semblance of a self that I was able to make, that I was able to actualize, was up for destruction, for active destruction. And there are reasons for this particular archetype to be in my life. But suffice it to say that in the end, only steel sharpens steel. And I have been tested. I have been tempered. I have been pounded. I have been gilded. And I am not what I used to be. Had I known 25 years ago that ascension would look like this, would I have done it? Yeah. What else is there? It's the only reason that I'm here. It's the only reason that we're on this rock. But I didn't really get that ascension was going to be lived out day to day. Part of me just never really ever fully grokked that. So for me, what's been really enjoyable is watching this descension occur in my daily life. I've never thought of daily life as being entirely like debased or not valuable. I've always thought that daily life on planet Earth is like mind-blowingly intense and beautiful. It's stunning. It's calming. It's psychedelic. It's the humans who are messed up. The humans are messed up. Not all of them. So many of them are. But there's nothing wrong with the planet. There's nothing wrong with being here on this planet. It's just that humanity is not doing really great right now. And that's how I've always felt. I love life. I adore daily life. I just don't like how people behave toward each other. And then, finally now, yeah, I really don't like how I behaved. I don't. I'm shocked at how badly I did behave. And that's okay. It's done. It's over. And something new is here now that requires appreciation. Requires it. And in appreciation, it's so funny how when you're fully in appreciation of someone or something, arguments fall away. Things that distress and disgust are not available. This is available, this appreciation, this sensation, this knowingness. There's a beauty within appreciation and as a result of appreciation. And again, as I've said, these are not quantifiable. These are experiences. And it's the difference between the person in line on Black Friday who's smiling and humming, and if you talked with them, they would smile and talk with you and have a nice thing to say. And the one who is red in the face and clearly upset and aggressive. You could say that the one who's aggressive is actually in deep appreciation of their pain, of their discomfort and fear. But I think it's a little bit more than that, because I truly believe that that whole construct of fear and anxiety and terror and general dissatisfaction and criticism and comparing and all that stuff, that's a virus that's not native to human beings. It's not native to our spirits. It's a virus. And thinking of it that way, seeing it that way, and feeling it that way has really, really been helpful. It is not something that I recognize as native. It is, therefore, fixable. And it is removable because it's not part of the natural machinery or makeup. So I don't think that fear and all that stuff is part of the lower mind or the little mind, but I think that little mind is very, very busy with polarity. And it's very easy for me to ruminate or get really focused in on opposites, the reconciliation of opposites. And there is no opposite if you can just take a step back. It's always an answer to a call that's been placed that you're just not aware of the caller. So there you go. That's what I think. I have been working on my novel. I'm excited about it. It's beautiful, and I'm decided that I don't need Nano to encourage me to write, so I just do it. And it is, though, for me, because I have this very, very intense and palpable reality within mine that that is just so limiting and so hateful. I see that really is the that really is the it's ground zero for me, and it is again just as foreign as terror or fear, anything like else is. So that's really all I have to say. Personal experience remains important to value, I think. There are a lot of, I think, movements about to connect us back up with who we really are. And this is a great time to discover new methods of interfacing with not only our spiritual nature, but to access new ways of living daily life. Simply enjoying daily life. Being in appreciation instead of argument. These are themes that I have had throughout my writing. And it's very good to get at the end of it, to be at the end of this. It took as long as it took. There was never a time requirement. Just that it got done. The sooner the better, so that I would be out of distress. But incrementally, as my daily life improves, as my mood improves, as the quality of my thinking improves, so does the sense of self and calm and peace. To get to the place where I have a me. I know what I'm referring to when I say I like that, I don't like that. And really being okay with liking some things and not liking others. I have been in the presence of very mighty magicians. Very, very mighty. And I have done great battle. And I'm at rest now. I'm at peace. And I'm finally safe because I know that my skill is enough. You just don't get there unless you've been through a few battles. So I'll end with a little quote that I really enjoy. I don't know who said it, don't know. I don't know if it's Sufi, I don't know. But it may be Zen, who knows? There's the story of a teacher and his student, and the student says to the teacher, "Why is it that you train me to fight? You say that the way is peace, and yet you train me to be a great warrior. Why?" And the teacher smiles and says, "It's far better to find yourself a warrior in a garden than to find you are a gardener on the battlefield." And I truly feel like the war is ending. And this great battle of light and dark, well, I see it playing out there. I see it playing out on the evening news. I see it playing out in my friends' lives and in my acquaintances' lives. So I don't think that I'm an aberration. I'm simply at the tip of the spear. And so I'm sharing my thoughts with you for what they're worth to you today, to me. They're so full of worth that they are priceless. How can I quantify my soul? How can I measure my spiritual gifts? The need to do so nullifies the gifts. I hope your Thanksgiving was lovely. I hope that if you didn't celebrate a Thanksgiving, that you do that once a year at least, preferably daily. I just think it's so wonderful. We're now beginning to walk into the time of year when it's culturally acceptable to talk about brotherly love and gratitude like it's a good thing. Happy days. So I hope that you're in thanks more than you're in complaint. And I hope that you are in peace more than you are in turmoil. And I hope that you know in your times of distress that it's not permanent. It's not a measure of your worth. And indeed, it's more like the rustling of the curtain right before it goes up. Fear not, and be of good cheer. Selah.